Most people get retirement completely backwards. They spend decades obsessing over how much to save, which accounts to use, which funds to pick, and they completely ignore the single most important question in all of personal finance. When can you actually stop? When is enough actually enough? And the answer is not what your financial advisor told you, it's not some magic age, and it has absolutely nothing to do with how much money is sitting in your account right now. Today, I am going to show you the exact moment you can stop contributing to retirement. And once you understand this, your entire relationship with money is going to change forever. Stay with me because the thing I'm going to reveal halfway through this video is something that almost nobody in the financial world wants to talk about openly. Let me start with a story that changed how I think about all of this. Imagine two people. Person A has been faithfully contributing to their 401k since they were 22 years old. Every paycheck, without fail, they send money into the future. They are 45 now, and they have a solid nest egg building. Person B started at 30, contributed aggressively for about 8 years, then completely stopped. Not because they ran out of money, not because something bad happened. They stopped because they had done the math and realized something profound, something that person A has never even stopped to calculate. Person B understood the concept that is going to anchor this entire video, and that concept is called the crossover point. Now, before I explain what the crossover point actually is, I need you to understand something about how compound interest works that most people fundamentally misunderstand. Everyone knows the basic idea. Your money grows over time, you earn returns on your returns. Great. But here is what people miss. After a certain threshold, your existing balance starts doing more work than your new contributions ever could. Think about that for a second. There comes a moment in your financial life where the money you have already saved is growing faster, in absolute dollar terms, than the new money you are actively adding. When that happens, your contributions become almost irrelevant to the final outcome, and that is the first signal that you might be approaching the moment when you can stop. Let me make this concrete. Say you have $400,000 in your retirement accounts. In a year with average market returns of around 7%, that account grows by roughly $28,000 on its own. Now, if you're contributing $1,000 a month, you're adding $12,000 a year through contributions. Your existing balance is already growing at more than double the rate of your contributions. The money is doing more work than you are. This is not a reason by itself to stop contributing, but it is a profound shift in the dynamic that most people never even notice because they're too busy staring at the contribution line on their paycheck. So when can you actually stop? The answer lives inside a framework called the FI number, and I want to walk you through this properly because the way most people calculate this is deeply flawed. Your FI number, your financial independence number, is the amount of money you need to have invested so that your annual expenses can be covered indefinitely by your investment returns alone. The classic rule you've probably heard is the 4% rule. You take your annual expenses, multiply by 25, and that is your number. So if you spend $50,000 a year, you need $1.25 million. At that point, historically speaking, a diversified portfolio has been able to sustain a 4% withdrawal rate for 30 or more years without running out of money. That research came out of Trinity University in the 1990s, and it has been tested extensively since then. But here's where it gets interesting, and where most people stop short. Hitting your FI number does not necessarily mean you have to stop working. It means you have achieved the freedom to make a choice. And that distinction is enormously important. Because the question we're really asking today is not, when can you retire? The question is, when can you stop actively contributing new money to your retirement accounts? Those are two completely different things. And the answer to the second question comes much, much earlier. Here's why. Once you hit a certain account balance, even if you're decades away from your target retirement number, the math starts working so heavily in your favor that additional contributions have a diminishing marginal impact on where you end up. This is the part that nobody talks about. Let me give you a real example. Suppose you're 35 years old and you have $200,000 saved. You plan to retire at 65. That's 30 years of growth. At a 7% annual return, that $200,000 grows to approximately $1.52 million by the time you are 65, without you adding a single additional dollar. Now, if your retirement spending target is 1.5 million, you have essentially already won. Every contribution you make from this point forward is bonus money. The game is already over. You just haven't realized it yet. Now, I'm not saying you should immediately stop contributing the moment you run this math. There are important nuances, and I will get to those. But I want you to feel the weight of what I just said. Millions of people are grinding, sacrificing, stressing, delaying vacations, skipping experiences, and contributing money they could be using to enrich their lives right now, even though the math has already ensured their retirement. They're working for a problem that is already solved. That's not prudence, that's financial anxiety dressed up as responsibility. So let me give you the actual framework for determining your personal crossover point. There are 3 numbers you need to know. First, your target retirement number. Use the 25 times annual expenses calculation as your starting point. Second, your current retirement account balance. Third, the number of years until you plan to access retirement funds. Once you have those 3 numbers, you run what I call the compound projection test. Take your current balance, apply an average annual return, which historically for a diversified stock and bond portfolio sits somewhere in the 6 to 7% range after inflation is factored in differently. Let me be precise here. Before inflation, the stock market has historically returned around 10% annually. After inflation, closer to 7%. For this calculation, you should use the inflation-adjusted number if your target spending is expressed in today's dollars, which it should be. So apply 7% annually to your current balance for the number of years until retirement. If that projected number meets or exceeds your retirement target, you have already crossed the threshold. You're in the zone where contributions are optional. And this brings me to the thing I promised you earlier, the thing that most financial professionals are weirdly reluctant to say out loud. The financial services industry has a vested interest in keeping you contributing. Every dollar you contribute to a managed fund generates fees. Every payroll contribution keeps you engaged with financial products. The entire infrastructure of retirement advice is built around the idea of perpetual contribution. Save more, contribute more, max out your accounts, never stop. And while that advice is genuinely helpful for people who have not yet hit the crossover point, it becomes actively counterproductive once you have. Because money you are aggressively saving in your 40s or 50s when you've already hit your projection target is money that could be funding experiences, reducing work stress, starting a business, investing in your health, or simply enjoying the life you've built. The singular focus on accumulation long past the point of necessity is one of the most common and least discussed financial mistakes that responsible, high-achieving people make. Now, let me address the objections, because I know what you're thinking right now. What about sequence of returns risk? What about living longer than expected? What about healthcare costs? What about inflation being higher than projected? These are all legitimate concerns, and they are exactly why I said hitting the crossover point means contributions become optional, not that they become pointless. There's a real difference. Let me walk through each of these. Sequence of returns risk is the danger that the market crashes right when you retire and your portfolio suffers permanent damage because you're withdrawing during a downturn. This is a genuine risk, and it's why many financial planners suggest the 4% rule is actually a bit aggressive and that something closer to 3 to 3.5% might be safer. If you're concerned about this, simply adjust your multiplier. Instead of 25 times expenses, use 30 or 33 times expenses. That gives you a bigger cushion and changes your crossover calculation accordingly, but it doesn't fundamentally break the argument. It just shifts the numbers slightly. Longevity risk, meaning living much longer than average, is real. The average American life expectancy today sits in the late 70s to early 80s, but plenty of people live into their 90s and beyond. If you retire at 65 and live to 95, you need 30 years of coverage. The Trinity study actually tested this. A 30-year horizon has historically been very survivable at a 4% withdrawal rate. If you want to plan for 40 years, again, just use a slightly lower withdrawal rate and adjust your target number. The framework holds. Healthcare is the one that makes people the most nervous, and honestly, it should give you some pause. Healthcare costs in retirement are genuinely difficult to predict, and they have historically risen faster than general inflation. This is a real variable. The way I suggest accounting for it is to add a dedicated healthcare buffer on top of your core retirement number. Some estimates suggest the average couple retiring today will need a range of $300,000 to $350,000 specifically for healthcare expenses over the course of retirement. Add that to your target and recalculate your crossover point. It moves the threshold, but it does not eliminate it. And as for inflation being higher than projected, yes, that is possible. Nobody knows where inflation goes over a 30-year period. This is why keeping your portfolio in assets that have historically kept pace with or beaten inflation over long periods, primarily stocks, is so important. A portfolio that is mostly in cash or bonds loses this protection. Asset allocation matters a great deal in determining how confidently you can rely on that 7% projection. Now I want to talk about a concept that changes the game entirely for a lot of people, and that is the idea of semi-retirement, or what some people call Coast-FI. Coast-FI is the term used in the financial independence community to describe the state where you have enough saved that, if left to grow untouched until traditional retirement age, your portfolio will reach your target without any further contributions. You can coast. You are not financially independent yet in the sense that you can stop working entirely, but you no longer need to save aggressively. You just need to cover your current living expenses. This is the exact moment we have been building toward in this entire video. Coast-FI is powerful because it unlocks options that most people think are only available to the wealthy. If you no longer need to aggressively save for retirement, you can take a lower-paying job that you actually enjoy. You can reduce your hours. You can start a passion project. You can move to a lower-cost area. You can take a sabbatical. All because the retirement problem is already solved, and you just need to tread water financially while the compound interest machine does its work in the background. So, how do you calculate your Coast-FI number? It is actually a reverse engineering exercise. Start with your retirement target, say $1.5 million. Then figure out how many years until retirement, say 30 years. Then discount that target backward in time using your expected growth rate. The formula is your retirement target divided by the quantity 1 plus your growth rate raised to the power of the number of years. So 1.5 million divided by 1.07 to the power of 30 gives you approximately $197,000. That means if you have around $200,000 saved at age 35, you have hit Coast-FI. You can stop contributing to retirement accounts entirely and simply let the existing balance grow. If your current expenses are covered by your income, you are done with the heavy lifting of retirement savings. Let me give you a few real-world scenarios to anchor this, because abstract math can feel disconnected from actual life decisions. Scenario 1. Sarah is 32 years old. She has been contributing aggressively since her mid-20s and has accumulated $180,000 in her retirement accounts. She plans to retire at 67. She spends about $45,000 a year and expects to maintain a similar lifestyle in retirement, so her target is $45,000 times 25, which is $1.125 million. Now, let's run the projection. $180,000 at 7% for 35 years grows to approximately $1.92 million. She has already blown past her target. Her Coast FI number for a 35-year horizon is roughly $130,000. She crossed that line about 2 years ago and did not even know it. Every dollar she has contributed since then has been extra insurance on an already solved problem. She now has the freedom to redirect that money toward paying off her mortgage faster, building a cash cushion, investing in a business, or simply spending more on experiences while she is young enough to fully enjoy them. Scenario 2. Marcus is 40. He got a late start and has $85,000 saved. He also wants to retire at 67, giving him 27 years of growth. His annual spending is $60,000, so his retirement target is $1.5 million. His Coast FI number for a 27-year runway is approximately $245,000. He has not hit it yet. He still needs to keep contributing, and contributing meaningfully. His situation is completely different from Sarah's. Even though they're both in their 40s and both responsibly saving, the crossover point is personal. It's not about your age, it's not about some arbitrary milestone, it is about your specific numbers. Scenario 3. Elena is 50. She has $600,000 saved and wants to retire at 65. 15 years of growth at 7% takes that $600,000 to approximately $1.65 million. Her spending is $55,000 a year, so her target is $1.375 million. She has already crossed the threshold. She has a healthy margin above her target, even without contributing another dollar. She is probably still maxing out her 401k every year out of habit and a vague financial anxiety, not because the math demands it. What I want you to take from these examples is that the crossover point is not a distant, hypothetical event. For many responsible savers, it has already happened, and the failure to recognize it costs them something real. It costs them choices, flexibility, and experiences during the years they are still healthy and energetic enough to fully appreciate them. There's one more layer to add here, and it's the psychological dimension, which might actually be the most important part of this entire conversation. Even when people run the math and realize they've hit the crossover point, they often can't bring themselves to stop or even reduce contributions. The fear is so deeply ingrained, the habit is so automatic, the financial anxiety is so persistent that the math alone does not create behavioral change. And I want to acknowledge that because it is real. If this resonates with you, here's a reframe that might help. Continuing to max out your retirement accounts past your crossover point is not being responsible, it's being risk-averse in the wrong direction. There's a risk to oversaving, just as there is a risk to undersaving. Oversaving means you arrive at retirement with far more money than you will ever spend, while have sacrificed years of experiences, opportunities, and freedom during your most capable decades. Some research has found that a significant portion of retirees die with most of their assets untouched, having lived in unnecessary financial anxiety throughout retirement, never allowing themselves to actually spend what they had accumulated. That is not a financial success story. That's a tragedy dressed up in spreadsheet data. The goal of retirement saving is not to maximize the number in your account. The goal is to reach a point of security that allows you to live fully, both before and after retirement. Once you have reached that security threshold, the optimal financial move is to redirect resources toward living, not toward further accumulation. So here's your practical action plan. First, calculate your annual retirement expenses in today's dollars. Be honest and specific. Include housing, food, healthcare, travel, hobbies, and a buffer. Second, multiply that number by 25 to get your baseline target. Then add a healthcare buffer and consider using 28 or 30 as your multiplier if you want extra security. Third, note your current retirement account balance. Fourth, determine the number of years until you plan to retire or access these funds. Fifth, run the compound projection. Take your current balance and apply 7% annual growth for the number of years until retirement. If the result meets or exceeds your target, you have hit the crossover point. Sixth, if you have hit it, consciously decide what to do with the money you were previously contributing. Don't just let it disappear into lifestyle inflation. Redirect it with intention. Pay off debt. Build liquid savings. Invest in yourself. Fund experiences. And if you haven't hit the crossover point yet, that's completely fine. Keep contributing. Do it strategically. Take advantage of employer matches, which are genuinely free money you should never leave on the table. But do the calculation. Know your number. Know where you stand. Because the worst outcome is to spend your entire working life contributing without ever stopping to ask whether the contribution is still necessary. The moment you can stop contributing to retirement is not 65, it's not when you have $1 million, it is the precise moment when your existing balance, projected forward at reasonable returns, will reach your retirement target on its own. That moment is your crossover point. For many of you watching this, that moment has already arrived and you are still running on autopilot, saving for a problem that compound interest already solved years ago. Check the math. Do the calculation, then make a conscious choice. Because at the end of your life, the question will not be how much was in your account. The question will be what you did with the time and resources you had. Make sure your answer is one you are proud of. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more videos helping you with investing, personal finance, and more. Check out this playlist of my top videos of personal picks, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.